Welcome back to Conversations. We are talking about John chapter 19 this week, the death of Jesus. Last week in John 18, we saw that Jesus was betrayed, he was denied by his friends, and then he suffered the injustice of a mock trial. Here, he's being put to death. The question I think that could arise very much here is, what do we think about when we have to endure a tragedy? Or when we have to endure something we didn't expect to happen, something bad, an accident, for example. Many times we go into the what if phase. What if this happened? What if I was there? What if this? What if that? Which really kind of leads to nowhere. Most of the time you can't even answer that question because the what ifs have no real answer. Might even ask the question of the disciples. What if the disciples had fought to free Jesus? Well, things wouldn't have worked out the way they did, of course, but we also sometimes ask the question, why? Very seldom do we get a good answer for that. However, John, looking back on the crucifixion of Jesus, he actually has an answer to the question, why? And I think that's a significant thing that John is doing here. He's trying to tell us here, this is the way it was supposed to be. He goes into a couple of things in which we see that there are some prophecies about Jesus that are fulfilled in the death of his death. First of all, we see this thing about them casting lots for his clothing. The soldiers at the foot of the cross have taken off his clothes, they've divided up some of the garments, and then they cast lot for the last piece. We find that predicted in Psalm 22 and verse 18. Somewhere along the line, John figured out, well, that was supposed to happen, and it did. And then he talks a little bit later on about the fact that none of Jesus' bones were broken. And that's one of the things that often would happen with the people who were being crucified. The soldiers would come by and break their bones, so they would die more quickly. Jesus' side is pierced, and that's a prophecy as well. But the one about the broken bones is very significant because I think John remembers something that happened way back in John chapter 1 when he first encountered Jesus, or when some of the disciples did. John the Baptist saw Jesus walking by, and he says to these disciples, "Look, the Lamb of God." And so John goes back to Exodus chapter 12 and verse 46 to see what happened at the first Passover. And at that Passover, they were to slaughter a lamb, but not break any of its bones. Pretty hard for John not to make that clear connection to that. We also have this thing down in the end of this particular chapter where two rich men, they sort of get their strength, backbone maybe, I don't know. They were sort of quiet disciples. They didn't really want to let anybody know because they were part of the ruling council. And they come and they take the body of Jesus. In fact, it says of Joseph of Arimathea, he did not give consent to their plan to kill Jesus. But he gets bold, and so does Nicodemus, and they come and they bury Jesus in Joseph's tomb, which satisfies another prophecy, even though John doesn't make anything of it here, but it's Isaiah 53 where he's buried with the rich, it says. And so all these prophecies make it very clear that John understands this was exactly the thing that was supposed to happen. It's the why. Very seldom can we figure out those things as to why something happened. John's got them for us. And he says, this is why it happened. This was supposed to happen. God had a plan. I would encourage you at some point to go back and take a look at Psalm 22. That particular psalm has a number of other things that are very clearly related to the death of Jesus, not the least of which is what we already mentioned about his clothes being divided up. But move a little bit further along, and when you finally get to the end of the psalm, you'll see that there's kind of a note of triumph in it. Because the psalm ends with the idea that the earth will turn to the Lord and bow down. Everyone on earth will turn to the Lord and bow down as a result of just went on before. A very clear reference to what is going to happen with the gospel as it moves out from Jerusalem to the rest of the world. Think about these prophecies. Realize that what happened was supposed to happen. God had a purpose, and he did it for you and I. Have a good discussion this week. Hope you enjoy it. Look forward to seeing you next time when we talk about John chapter 20, the resurrection.